Hello and welcome to the C-Suite Sessions. I'm Andreas Pouros. I'm the founder and CEO of a business called Greenlight.
My name is Deri Jones, and I'm the founder and the chief executive of thinkTribe. Greenlight brings traffic to your site. thinkTribe makes sure it converts. We thought it would be good to have a forum where C-level guys can get together
to get a sense of their story, the challenges that they face and the challenges that their customers face.
and the tips and tricks we can share on the way.
Today we're joined by Joe Bush, who's CEO and founder of a great business called The Chat Shop. Joe, can you introduce yourself and talk a bit about The Chat Shop?
Yeah, of course. So as you mentioned, I'm Joe. I'm the founder of the Chat Shop. We started up about 9 years ago, and we're a full-service conversation agency. So our core focus is around growing businesses through the power of conversation, and we cover the full spectrum of all things chatbots, and so on. My team work with a mix of kind of fast growth startups and publicly listed firms to kind of support their conversion and customer delight through chat.
I think the interesting thing is that all of us on the call now interact with the client journey in different ways. And it's these kind of conversations that make you realize how reliant we all are on each other without even realizing it. And me and Deri speak about this quite regularly.
Interesting.
So, obviously, Deri and his team at Tribe, their job is to make sure that sites stay up and stable and there are no technical impediments to commerce. And then my team at Greenlight drive traffic through advertising, SEO, and those kind of things into the sites. And then so I'm reliant, therefore, on Deri's team, making sure that I'm sending traffic to something that's staying up that can deal with load and scalability. But then after the point where me and my team step back, and then the customer has to then try and find a way to convert or be satisfied, that's when your team, Joe, typically kind of kick in to fulfill that end of the relationship with clients. So it's great to kind of think about that relationship between those things. And typically, when we experience it with our clients, we find that conversion rates are often hard to improve. And we spend lots of time with doing crow and technical changes, and I'm sure Deri does the same thing with his team. Yeah. And what we don't often get a sense of is what happens when the customer wants to have a conversation and triggers that conversation. And it's always struck me that there's such a wide range of experience that people have with, be it on-site chats with humans or with chatbots. Why do you think there is such a broad range of experience, from that really great, satisfying, problem resolved, big tick, to that people being frustrated and actually often that chat function doing more harm than good in some cases?
Yeah, really interesting question. And I think what we've found is chat is often a bit of an afterthought for people. They don't realize that actually is that key missing link in that full customer journey. Often when people are trying to grow their business, their main focus is on driving more traffic, because more traffic means more sales or more leads. I think what people often forget is the fact that chat is quite a key part in that decision-making funnel. And because it's not always a focus point for people, it doesn't have the time and attention it needs to be able to really get it off the ground and drive proper results. We're in quite a fortunate position in terms of we've spent 9 years thinking about one thing, which is how can we deliver a good chat experience. And we've learned across different markets and different business sizes and customer types that it's actually quite a difficult thing to get right. We're all individuals. And I think businesses often forget the fact that we all have individual needs. And so one size fits all approach doesn't work, which is often the challenge with chatbots, is they tend to be quite linear, quite restricted in the way they function. Whereas because our needs are so unique, the kind of a more tailored approach needs to be placed onto chat. I think the other thing to kind of remember is chat is often seen as a cheaper option over and above phone and email. And so the way it's kind of designed is around meeting short-term cost-saving needs, whereas the reality is if you put proper energy into it and really consider the information and the knowledge you have and map out those journeys, identify who you should be engaging with at what time, with what message, and then how that then feeds through to the business outcomes. And keeping that front of mind can really help you get the best results out of all things chat.
I think with some of the bad experiences people have had. So I had an experience yesterday with FedEx. I don't mind saying who it was. where I had the delivery that was due to arrive and it didn't arrive. So I go onto the website to try and obviously find out what's happened to my delivery, if it's delivered or not. And I was given a chatbot, no other option beyond the chatbot. So then I'm having this conversation, I say conversation in the loosest possible way with this chatbot, where is my delivery? And it said, your delivery is still due to be delivered, and it'll be delivered by 12 a.m. tomorrow, or at 12 a.m. tomorrow. So clearly in my mind, what it's done is it thinks the delivery is coming tomorrow, and the earliest time tomorrow is 12 a.m. So it being the machine goes, it's obviously you're going to receive it at 12 a.m. So then I respond back and say, well, I don't think it is going to be 12 a.m. because what's coming would have been chilled and actually would probably be sent back now to the place that it's come from because it can't survive for too long chilled. And so then the chatbot then didn't know how to respond to that and then repeated itself again and again and again. So then there's me insulting a chatbot just from sheer frustration and then apologizing to the chatbot for being rude as well. So it goes kind of this loop of actually being a really horrible experience and having no option really of speaking to a real person or getting any kind of feedback. So then I'm stuck there just waiting to see if this package does arrive at any point, and no real means of contacting anybody else. So then you contact the actual retailer who says, well, it's not our problem, it's FedEx's problem now, we can't really do anything about it. Is that an issue of implementation, or is it an issue of just technology not being as good as it could be, or is it entirely my fault for expecting too much?
It's a surprisingly common problem with chatbots, especially. They're only as good as the way they're programmed, and the media will portray this whole idea of AI, machine learning is going to take over our jobs. You'll never need anyone in a customer-facing role. But the reality is, there always has to be someone behind the chatbot to program it and set it up to be able to handle those sorts of interactions. If it was true AI, you wouldn't need an interface to kind of enhance the bot. It would just self-learn and handle things on its own. And kind of what you just described is a prime example of an edge case, something which doesn't come up every day. Well, it probably does come up every day with FedEx, but the language you're using is very natural, and a chatbot just can't interpret that unless it's been programmed to interpret that. And even for the biggest of all businesses, like a company like FedEx, it just doesn't work, unfortunately, for those interactions which are more complicated. Our position on this has always been that chatbots have a purpose, and I'm a big fan of chatbots, but not to try and replace every single contact channel, every single interaction. It's around trying to find that happy medium between what are those kind of more transactional common queries which we can nicely automate, and let's also make sure that there's a human there to support them when there are those edge cases which don't fit into what's been pre-programmed. And then you have that continuous loop to then start training based on those interactions which do feed through to the agent team.
So Andrea's story was a customer service story. What about, which is not losing the client? What about finishing the checkout, helping the buyer spend the money?
I mean, in a lot of cases, why would you want to engage with a chatbot to try and help complete that sale? The analogy I always have when it comes to commerce or shopping is, and it's probably bad timing because Amazon Go have just launched their people-less stores. But the best in-store experiences are the ones where you have a kind of a tailored, warm, engaging interaction, and it's a human-to-human type relationship. And so chatbots are generally less effective in the kind of shopping process. Having said that, for very selective areas, they can be really effective. So we've got some cool stuff which monitors if someone is looking to abandon a shopping cart, and maybe they've tried a discount code and it hasn't worked, and you can use a bot to surface up a custom code for them and then bring them into a conversation that way. But to expect a bot to do your sales for you when most sales are quite an emotive decision, especially in the considered purchase space.
Do you think, Joe, that people prefer speaking to a human being as opposed to a chatbot, regardless of efficiency?
In most cases, yes, because most chatbot experiences are generally quite poor, and they're designed to be efficient, supposedly, rather than to be engaging and warm. There are some exceptions to this, because there are things that we do where we just don't want to talk to someone, we just want to have an action sorted. So take if you're trying to deal with like a utility company or with a refund, sometimes you just want to be able to action something quickly and efficiently. You don't want to go in a queue, you don't want to have to explain your problem to someone, you just want to just run things as quick as possible. And chatbots can be brilliant for that, because they can integrate into systems and process actions on your behalf. But I would say for the majority of what we want to do online, if we want to seek out help or support or a conversation or reassurance, that's the sort of thing which only really a human can effectively do.
But I'm assuming it's not feasible for, or commercially feasible for everyone to have human beings manning every possible chat and scenario. So then a mixture of chatbots and human chat would be the optimal thing. It's just that both need to be executed exceptionally well, ultimately.
In time. But the nice thing is you can set up with a hybrid human plus chatbot style way of doing things, so that the chatbot handles that initial inquiry and then hands over to a human. And I think the mistake people often make is they try and build the whole thing in the beginning days. And we always like to try and take an MVP style approach, a minimum viable product approach, whereby we try and build something which has kind of some immediate value, but we haven't tried to design the whole lot. And then through learning, through real customer interactions, we can then evolve the automation side of things to be able to kind of bring in efficiency without driving customer dissatisfaction. And doing it that sort of way means that actually it's a lot more achievable and within reach for firms, because there's not a 6 month development cycle, and by the time it's live, it's out of date.
And that fits in with the way AI in theory works, or logic. You train it with real data, so by having humans taking the chats early, they can then work out what's going on and put in your rules. But sometimes it's very annoying for a user, because you're not sure if it's a human or not. Chatbot pretending to be human is frustrating.
Yeah. And Deri, why is that frustrating for you? Because I do agree with that, but I'm just intrigued kind of the angle from your perspective.
I mean, maybe I'm not a typical shopper, because I know too much about the moving parts that go on behind a website. But like in Andreas's case, it's like, if it's a real human being, I'm going to shout at them in a different way. Well, I know half of what I say, it just doesn't get.
Yeah. I think it depends on what the intention is of the implementation. So you do get the sense sometimes that a chatbot's just there to try and avoid people having to man a human chat function, because it's going to be more expensive, I would suspect, than an ordinary chatbot. So often you kind of think, well, is it just someone trying to put something in place, and if it only captures even 3% of queries, that's good enough, because it's acting like gatekeeper. And certainly, as you explained, Joe, that's going to change in time as things get better and improve. But I do kind of think sometimes that some of the chatbot implementations that I've seen are quite cynical, in terms of they're designed to deal with only a small percentage of potential queries knowingly, and then almost knowingly doing that and having a good percentage of people using it being dissatisfied. Sometimes you think, well, you may as well not even have it in that case, and just give you an email address and I'll get a proper response tomorrow. So as with most things, execution is everything, isn't it? Yeah.
Execution and giving the customer choice and educating them. I think the mistake people often make is they try and hide the fact that it's a bot. And there should be no shame in having a bot, because it's fast, it's efficient, it's immediately available. It should be programmed to be able to handle an action, a lot of what you're trying to tackle with it. The mistake I think people make is when they try and make it human-like in appearance, and then it deceives people, and then there's a bit of mistrust being developed. And then Andreas, with kind of your use case, the challenge there, like you had with FedEx, is you talk to the bot and then you hit a dead end.
Yeah.
Whereas there are always options, whether it's escalating through to a human agent, triggering a phone call, a form to be able to fill in and send it over to a business as a ticket or as an email. Ideally it's real time as a human conversation, but not all businesses can have been able to achieve that.
I would have settled with someone with the chatbot saying, I can't answer this query, but I've passed it on to someone and they'll get back to you in 5 hours. I would have almost been satisfied with, at least it's not my problem anymore. Someone else can take care of this, and I've flagged it as an issue. to someone.
Yeah, and the other tricky point, if they're not capturing where people are getting lost, is how are they ever going to improve the bot? If you hit a dead end and then you can't give it feedback and pass that over through to the business, they're never going to be able to train it on those interaction types.
And certainly what we've always done in the agency is, when we do our initial research before kind of building a plan, a strategy, a digital strategy for clients, is we pull data from wherever we can find it. And if there is decent data from the chat function, that's super useful. And you wonder how much this chatbot data is actually being put in any kind of format that can be shared with anyone for any real proactivity. And that's interesting in of itself, in terms of, is that data just a dead end and no one's really taking it and going, well, actually, 40,000 people had the exact same problem that Andreas had. We probably need to fix this, be it with product or with FAQs or something. And so you do wonder whether actually there's, again, is implementation often cynical and therefore they don't really care what happens in that chatbot, or is it really proactive in terms of, well, if it's not working as well as it could, at least we're capturing data and improving what we're trying to do.
And there's so much data. The beauty of all things conversation is you have the transcript all written down, you have timestamps, you can view the visitor's history, you can understand where they've come from, what they've actioned on your website, and this is such rich information which can be harnessed in so many different ways.
I mean, one way I've seen that work is at Tribe, where we're constantly measuring, mystery shopping our clients' websites to make sure the customer experience is good and it's working. And I guess if a user on a store can't check out for some reason, they've got the goods in the basket, can't check out, some percentage of those will flip to chat and flag up there's a problem on the website. I'm on an iPhone, it's not working for me. So that's where you can join up the individual with the.
It removes the guesswork, right? I mean, why people are bouncing on this page so much more than you'd expect. It removes the guesswork. If someone's actually said to you, well, here's the reason why. We had it years ago with them when we worked with hotels.com, where we had to transfer a lot of their US assets into a UK launch. And what they did is they just copied over the payment gateways over from the US to the UK. So half of the UK credit cards were being rejected. It took us ages to find that, because you have to go through a whole process of working through every single credit card to see what was happening. It was just the country flags were just throwing it out. And if there's a chat function on the page, we would have worked it out within minutes, literally within minutes.
And that is the beauty of the real-time, on-demand nature of it. Because how many customers would have to go through that challenge, making their payment, for someone to then reach out and say, hey, I'm trying to pay you money. If they had to go through and phone you or email you, people aren't that bothered unless you're selling something very, very unique. Whereas on chat, it's quick, it's easy, they can hopefully get it resolved.
Which kind of leads to my final question of this section, which is around, do you find that selling chat to corporates or less than corporates, whether it's now become quite a commoditized space where cost becomes the key determining factor of who people use or otherwise? Because obviously if you're doing chat properly, you're saving money, making more money, and we find it in our sector, and I'm sure Deri does too, where when sectors mature a bit, then what you're finding is things do become more commoditized, and everyone seems like they're doing the same thing, so then cost becomes the key differentiator.
Yeah, and it's been an interesting journey, I think, for us, because when we first started about 9 years ago, we were the only provider doing what we did. And over the years, we've had a fair few competitors crop up in the market, and their approach tends to be to try and race to the bottom of price, and we don't compete on price. We're not set up to give you the very cheapest service. The business is a lot more than just a team of chat agents, and a lot of energy goes into having a proper strategy, analyzing the insights, finding the right team members, as are all native English, UK and US based, client relationships, and so on, to kind of really make sure that we are hitting on two core goals, which is, are we delivering a great customer experience, and are we delivering the business a return on investment? And that's the kind of area we compete in. But one of the things we've been looking at recently has been, how can we better display that to the world? when everyone's offering the same sort of thing, live chat outsourcing, chatbot building, we've been looking at how can we take it up another level and have something which is a lot more compelling and focus more on the reasons why our clients work with us. So we're going through a bit of a transitionary period at the moment to move away from live chat outsourcing and over to more much more focused propositions, which are tailored to individual kind of use cases. So we've got one around lead generation, one around commerce, one around support. And with that, there's a mix of kind of strategy, technology, and process to be able to have something which is very tailored to specific business uses.
So it becomes more about value as opposed to cost, which is always the right thing. And I think we all suffer it with when we're pitching and talking to procurement departments, trying to make them understand what the difference is between value and cost. And every now and again, you get that great procurement person who really knows their job. We had one recently where we were negotiating on price, and then the procurement person turned around to me and said to me, "Look, don't worry about the price. We're not buying carpet." And so and that was the first time for years. So I was like, okay, "Thank you. We can start talking about growing your business now, talking about investing in the future, doing all those great things, as opposed to can you do it cheaper? Can you do it cheaper?" So again, certainly what you do, Joe, it lends itself to that value versus cost, because for me, it's an integral part of that client experience, that customer experience, which is so important. Which again, my team and Deri's team rely on your end doing its job, so it makes everyone else look good as well.
Yeah.
I mean, what I see a growth areas is the big heading of customer experience. Organizations are wanting to invest in that because they recognize that the online world is so competitive. To have unique products, to have unique services is hard, but the last big economic battle is over who's got the best experience that feels best when I'm using it or buying it. And so online experience, as well as in store, on telephone, but online. But the challenge we find sometimes is an organization is who owns that customer experience. You might in some cases have a customer journey director or manager, or it might be pushed to one side of the e-commerce or the merchandising or the digital team. So where do you fit in, and how do you demonstrate the customer experience value in the best way?
So traditionally, I believe most people have generally fit in or competed on either quality, price, or convenience. They're I think the core areas that you can compete in. But I am a big believer in the fact that there's a fourth, which is all around experience. And ultimately, everyone has a responsibility for delivering a good customer experience. Whether let's take an e-commerce brand as an example, whether you're in the customer contact team or in the marketing team or in the dispatch team, every single touch point that a visitor has with that business is a chance to add or detract from that customer experience. And our positioning is generally on someone's very early interactions with the business. It's when they've recently come to the website and before they've necessarily become a customer. And our place is to try and deliver a warm, welcoming, engaging, and a person-to-person, a human-to-human type relationship, and make that person feel like they are the only one on the website at that point in time, and give them all the.
How do you find in your client organizations? Do they? I'm just thinking about silos. Trying to help an organization, particularly the larger ones. How do you get people to talk to each other across the silos, understand that this is the core thing, customer experience?
Who's the buyer of your services? What's the job title?
Typically CMO roles in a lot of cases. And I think more and more customer experience sits within marketing teams. And also marketing, they're very important in terms of, chat is a very important part of people's marketing mix, or at least it's becoming so more and more.
I mean, I hear some sort of maverick views out there that marketing is either marketing comms, pushing messages out. Everything else is conversion or sales enabling, or so marketing is going through, I think, a bit of a transformation, isn't it? Where marketing fits into the whole digital space. But in terms of the trend, are you seeing an increased demand from those guys, and what is the data? What do they do with it, or do you still get stuck with just part of the business? rather than it being taken wider?
I mean, our aim for the next couple of years is to make conversation a topic of boardroom conversations, because more and more it's touching on all of those different points of the business. It is a key part of marketing, and I think marketing will always be the kind of the core owners. But the reality is, everything that conversation achieves can help the rest of the business achieve its objectives. So we are doing our best to try and build up links and relationships with various different people in our client organizations. It's always a bit of a slow and steady progress.
What kind of data they like at the board level? How can you summarize it down?
Good question. I think there's a few different elements to it. I think there's the kind of quantitative data, which I think everyone understands in terms of the impact on the conversion funnel, customer satisfaction, net promoter score, and that side of things. But I think the area which is becoming more interesting is the customer insights element of it. To take kind of the way things have traditionally been done, you have market research, and that's either a survey or a focus group. And it's quite a clinical way of generating feedback. And also it only really surveys your existing customers or your idea of your prospective customers. The beauty of chat is you've got people in their natural habitat, engaging with the business in a very natural way. And what they say and how they say it is a really, really useful way of being able to better understand not just your current customers, but your prospective customers. Because not only do you know what they've said, but also you know what the end result was, whether they ended up buying from you or moving on and coming back another time.
I think that's a really, really powerful thing. So often marketing surveys and so on are done with the best intentions, but you're asking people about something when they're not doing it, when it's not on their mind. And so you get answers. We all know human beings answer different questions in different ways depending on
even with usability, where you put people in a room and you kind of get them to go through certain tasks, and you do your best to make sure that it's as clean a test as possible, but it's not going to be anywhere near as clean as dealing with a person's real world context and real world experience of a website or brand. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So I like that. So looking at longer term trends in the market, AP and I chatted just this morning about, we've seen a pickup just in the last month of interest. Digital post-COVID is going to be bigger and it's going to keep on being more important for more businesses. Where do you see chat fit into that? Is that exactly what you're seeing, or are you seeing a different trend?
We've definitely seen an uptick, and it's interesting because we've seen an uptick across different use cases, different industry verticals. I think this year is hopefully going to be good for a lot of businesses. There's a lot of pent up demand. I think the forecast for the economy growth is looking more positive than it was originally intended to be. And I think people are moving away past now, or at least quickly moving past the extend your cash runway position. I think they're now in a position where they're looking to capitalize on these next few years to make up for any lost experiences. And even the ones who have grown, they're now moving out of the challenging times, and they're looking at how they can take it to the next level. So I'm feeling very positive about the next few years. And it's definitely showing in both a kind of prospective client perspective, as well as from our existing clients, and seeing an increase in demand across most verticals as well.
So it fits in the story where we started, where AP started us, that the Greenlight team bring in the visitors to the website. Part of my team at Tribe, we measure the customer experience and keep it tip top and flag up when it isn't. And you guys are doing exactly the same, Joe. You're flagging up when it's not tip top. Overall, the whole thing is to make the customer experience good and make the conversions.
Definitely. And the only thing I'd add to that, Deri, is it's a perpetual loop that kind of then feeds right back into the very beginning and becomes this self-perpetuating flow, there's a huge synergistic opportunity there.
Great to talk with you, Joe. Fantastic.
Likewise. Thank you both for having me on today.
Cheers. Thank you, Joe.